Retro tracks are a big part of Mario Kart games and something people always get excited for, hoping their favorites get brought back. So I thought, thinking wishfully here, what retro tracks I personally like to see in the next entry of the series. Well, this is a wish list. I was trying to be semi-realistic, but I don't expect this to happen. However, it is what I want to see happen, so I picked out 24 tracks I'd like to see in the next entry, if I got to choose them. So let's start things off with Super Mario Kart. As you know, this game has some big hitters like Mario Circuit 4, Donut Plains 2, Koopa Beach 1, lots of creative tracks here. Now the one standout in this game has to be Rainbow Road, but we've seen that track in the last 3 entries of the series, so I think that one can use a rest. But if we have to tracks from this game, one I'd pick for sure is one of the Vanilla Lake tracks. We've only ever seen these ones remade in Tour, and I think that it's a little unfortunate. While Vanilla Lake is not a great track in general, there's a lot of potential it has with the underwater sections, maybe even a glider ramp. Like an underwater section would be really cool for that track. There's the ice blocks, they can do a lot with that. I don't think it should keep the exact same gimmick obviously, but there's still a lot they can do with an ice obstacle or something similar. And yeah, that would just be one I'd like to see back. And then for another one, I think Shoko Island, probably Shoko Island 1 would be a cool one because we don't really see themes like that anymore because that was a desert theme back then. Now we get desert tracks, so. And we just got Shoko Mountain from the 64, so that's not coming back, so we're going to get one of the Super Mario Kart ones. I think Shoko Island 1 simply because Island 2 was remade in DS and this one was not, so it'd be better to use one that hasn't been remade in like a big game because I'm not going to count it to a retro, so. That'd be cool just for variety's sake, the theme. They can add gliders somewhere. And they can like 3Dify it to make it something really cool. Like what they've been doing to GBA, what they did to Bowser Castle 3, I could see that happening to Shoko Island. I don't know exactly how, but I'm sure they can think of something because Nintendo is super good at that, obviously. Now moving on to Mario Kart 64. Now one track everyone knows is going to come back. Gotta be Wario Stadium, right? With such a variety in the dirt road, the obstacles, the turns. So much fun to drive around a dirt road with nothing on it for 6 whole minutes. But there's a jump. Wow, what a cool track. Yeah, I don't think this one needs to come back. I know people want it back, but I personally don't care about it. Like, it's just way too long, first of all. It looks like a really rushed track because all it is a dirt road and like a few bumps and Wario's face on the sides. So I think this was added last minute to that game, which is why it's never been remade. And they made a new Wario Stadium in the DS that just did this track, but made it better by adding bigger jumps and bumps, fire to actually have an obstacle, and ramps everywhere. And not only that, they remade that one in Mario Kart 8 with everything they could have added, like an anti-gravity section, an underwater section, more fiery obstacles, and the glider ramp at the end. That's what they could have done the N64 Wario Stadium, but they just did it at the DS Wario Stadium. That it'd just be abundant to remake this one. So personally, I don't think that one needs to come back. But now for a track I do think could come back from this game, and that is Banshee Boardwalk. People don't talk about this track too much, and I don't get why. We haven't seen it since Mario Kart DS, and that game was 18 years ago. 18 years. I think it's time to see this one back. There's the boardwalk itself, a little generic, but they could add a lot to it. They could add like a twisty road going underwater like they did with Boot Lake. There's that Cheep Cheep, they could do a lot with that too. And that abandoned house area, I think they could expand on that area a lot because it is rather short right now. They could add whole new sections, make the bats into something cool, maybe add a whole nother level to it, like an upstairs or something. Or you can go down into the cracks and there's a basement area underwater. Something like that I think would be super cool. And it's just something I think would add difficulty because Banshee Boardwalk is one of the most difficult tracks from Mario Kart 64. Then another one, a lot of people don't really like this one a lot. Like, it's not a bad track, but people don't care about it. But I think it'd be cool to see back. Let's keep it trip at beach. Now, it is a basic beach beginner track, but of those tracks, I feel like this one is one of the most potential for something. That shortcut has a lot, like maybe you can go onto the rocky area, but you need a mushroom because it's off-road, so you lose speed. Maybe you add an underwater section near the beginning or at the end, an optional underwater section, instead of going the long way over to the ramps. I think something like that would be cool, but it'd still be a basic beginner track, which you need, so that's sort of the whole purpose of this one, but there's still a lot they can do with it to make this one look cool, and it's one of my favorite tracks. Moving on to Mario Kart Super Circuit. Now, the first track we have from this game is Lakeside Park, and this jump pad gimmick would be cool to see in a modern Mario Kart game. Like, it was frustrating to deal with on the Game Boy Advance, but in a new game, without jump pads would work now, and how Lacto is very restrictive, I think it could be really good. And the elements of the volcano erupting onto the track as obstacles are really cool, so seeing that back would be nice. And the music, one of the most underrated songs in Mario Kart, the music on Lakeside Park is great. Now, speaking of tracks with good music, I present to you Sky Garden. Yes, I know this was just remade in the Booster Course Pass, but they did not do it justice in the Booster Course Pass. They made it a whole new track and took away the good music. So I want them to get another shot at Sky Garden, make it closer to the original, still add new stuff in, but make the road look like how it did in the original, make the layout the same as it did in the original, make the music sound like it did in the original, because that's what made that track so good. And it was one of the most popular tracks back then. Now it's one of the least popular tracks because of what they did to it. So give that track another shot and make it more faithful to the original, and I think it'd be really good. Now, Luigi Circuit's another one from this game I'd like to see back. It wasn't tour, so there's that, but the rain in it, in a modern Mario Kart game with HD visuals, the rain could look really cool. We barely see weather on track, so that's why the rain's like a big thing here. And you have the puddle obstacles, so those are always fun. Any of the Kirby Road to make this one interesting to drive around, so it's not just a boring circuit track. But it is a simpler track, so you can just let the items have more power, not the track causing chaos everywhere, so it's just a leisurely race. Like, I think you need some of that. Like, DS Mario Circuit and the Booster Course Pass, people don't like it, but I personally really like that track for its simplicity. So that's why I want something like GBA Luigi Circuit here, and it also has the rain to add more to the track. That would add elements to it, so it wouldn't just be boring. Now, some of you are going to disagree with this, but I think it's time for a Rainbow Road to come back, obviously, and that's Super Circuits. Obviously, it's not the best one, but Wii and 3DS, my two favorites, just came back, and I think you gotta save Double Dashes for a little later. And DS's, I just don't care that much about, so gotta pick the GBAs. Now, the jump pack gimmick here leads for countless shortcut opportunities. There's so many Easter eggs, or there is that one Easter egg in this track, they could add more. And that one shortcut, I think, has a lot of potential to do more in how the game works now. Like, you jump off of that, and then you can jump onto a whole new, like, sky area above it with a curvy, narrow road. Something like that would be really cool. So I think it's stayed pretty faithful to the original, but they would spice it up in a few ways to make it new. And next up we have Mario Kart Double Dash, and this one has heavy hitters. So the first track we're going to be talking about here is Yoshi Circuit. We have not seen enough of this track. It needs to be in every single Mario Kart game. Actually, I think it's time to see another Wario track, guys. Wario Coliseum. Now, Wario Coliseum, I thought this one should have been Mario Kart 8 because of the new anti-gravity mechanic. This track would have been perfect for that. There's so many opportunities for that with all the twisty roads and driving sideways or upside down. They could have added so much to that in this track, but they didn't choose to bring it back. I never understood why, but I think it's time for it to come back because it's one of the few tracks that has not been remade once. And this track came out in 2001 and still hasn't been remade. So I think it's time. It's the only 2-lap track ever. They could even add something like a glider ramp somewhere. I'm sure there's a ton of spots they could do that. Like that one jump in the middle, they can make that into a glider ramp. So I think that one's long overdue. Then another one that kind of got snubbed with getting remade because of Tour and all the city tracks, Mushroom City. Now this has always been one of my favorite traffic courses for a variety of reasons. It's fun to drive around, there's split paths, and it's short and simple, but still difficult. So I hope they bring Mushroom City back. It'd be a really cool one. It'll look great with the new graphics too, and I don't think it'd feel that much like a city track. Like, it is technically a city, but the city tracks they make now are just a ton of different paths. This one just is a linear layout, but still complex enough to be fun. And it's more difficult than all the new city tracks have been. And now we move on to Mario Kart DS. And you know, a lot of Mario Kart DS tracks were snubbed from that booster course pass, so you bet we're talking about those here. And we're going to start off with Luigi's Mansion. Now, I already said a haunted track in Banshee Boardwalk, but Banshee Boardwalk is more like a pier, an abandoned house, that type of thing. Luigi's Mansion's a mansion and a forest, so I think they're different enough to be both included. And it's something that I think should have been in the booster pass, but oh well, it's not. But I think it's a really cool track, one of the most fun, simpler ones, beginner tracks for sure, and I'd hope to see it back. Next one is Delfino Square. We just don't get a lot of like chill town, like leisurely tracks that aren't circuits. Like, even circuits are fast-paced music. Delfino Square is just a chill vibe overall, and the big part of it's that bridge at the end, rising and falling. I think you gotta bring that back. There's not a whole lot that I think could be changed. Maybe they could add an underwater section near that like one dock area or something like that, but it's just a fun track all around. I think a lot of fans would be happy to see that one back. It references Mario Sunshine. So yeah, just a fun track overall. I'd like to see it back. Now here we have the big one from this game. You know the one? The one everyone was riding that should have been over in the Booster Course Pass over Mario Circuit. Yeah, you gotta bring Airship Fortress back. This track has phenomenal music. It's based on the Super Mario Bros. Games, which everyone loves. And the theme is great, like a castle, but not actually like a Bowser's castle. The rocky wrenches, the fire, everything about this track's perfect. And it's a fun to drive layout. Like, that spinny tower's cool. The avoiding the bullet bills as you go through the starting line is cool. The driving around the cracks at the end is fun. It's difficult and it's fun to drive around. It's just almost the perfect track, one of my all-time favorite tracks in the series, and I'd like to see it return. Now the next one, Mario Kart Wii, we've seen a lot of tracks from this in the Booster Course Pass, so unfortunately I'm not going to be talking about any of them in the Booster Course Pass, but that's where a lot of the heavy hitters went. But there was one notable track that wasn't in the Booster Course Pass, and not even in Tour either. That's Toad's Factory. Now Toad's Factory, I think there's a reason it wasn't in Tour. It's a bit of a complex track with the smashers and the conveyors, but I think that's why it should be brought back. The smashers and conveyors, just the whole factory theme in general is really cool, really unique. We don't see that in Mario Kart much at all, so I'd really like to see it back. It's one of my favorite tracks on Mario Kart Wii. I love the music. They could add a glider ramp, the opportunity is right there at the end. Maybe even an underwater section of the dock, but I think that's a little unlikely. Or not underwater, anti-gravity. That'd be a great area to add anti-gravity near the dock, or even in the factory itself. And then you have more from this game. This game's been overused, but it's my favorite Mario Kart game, so we're going to continue to overuse it. So Dry Ruins is next. We haven't talked about a single desert track, and that's because desert tracks are typically really boring. But Dry Ruins isn't boring. Trust. You have that one narrow bridge with the pokies, pillars literally falling on you as you drive to provide cool obstacles, and then you drive inside a pyramid, which you needed half pipes to avoid in the Wii, but I think that could be turned into a whole anti-gravity section. Plus they bring back the sand that adds up every lap with the pokies in it that make it even harder and harder to get around. I think something like that would be really cool, and then they could add a glider ramp at the end to finish it off. There's so much innovation they can do to this track to make it better and better, and I think it's time to see it happen. And one final track from Mario Kart Wii, and that's got to be Bowser's Castle. Wii has my favorite Bowser Castle track of all time. I'd love to see it back, and it'd be really cool. You have difficulty, first of all. The music is great. The Bowser is spewing fire at you, and you have to go on the half pipes to avoid it, but if you don't half pipe right, you'll fall into the lava. If you don't go on the half pipes at all, you'll either get hit by the fire or have to drive on the muddy road that slows you down and you lose a ton of time. So the difficulty, we don't see a lot of that in Mario Kart 8, and I think it's time for that to come back. So Wii Bowser's Castle is the first part of it, and I just love to see it back too. So I think that's all the Wii tracks we really need, because again, a lot of the heavy hitters have come back. These are the 3 really big ones left that have yet to come back. So moving on to Mario Kart 7. Now, almost all of these tracks have been remade in either 8 or 2er, so might be a little abundant here, but a few of them haven't. And the first one we're going to talk about that hasn't is Mako Woohoo. Now, I can't include both Mako Woohoo and Woohoo Loop because that'd be abundant, but either of them could really come back. I'm picking Mako Woohoo simply for the sunset and the castle looking really pretty, and it's just overall more unique. Gives you the cave area, and Woohoo Loop could be a little similar to those city tracks. Mako Woohoo is a little more like different and adds more variety. And the sunset in general, the sunset looks gorgeous. I'd love to see that in HD. And another one I want to see back in this game is just the Mario Circuit. It's a perfect beginner track to start off the Retro Cups. You go through Peach's Castle, you have the mushroom that adds to the game. Those pink trees look really nice. It just feels like the perfect introductory track. I'd love to see that one back. The glider ramp could add a little bit. Maybe they make the Peach's Castle section anti-gravity or something. I don't know. They could just leave it as is and bring it back, just HDify it. I just think it's like one of the best introductory tracks we have as an option here, so that's why I picked it. Next up, we have Wario Shipyard. Now, Wario does have a lot of unique tracks, and Shipyard's no exception. I cannot talk today. So this track takes place on an abandoned shipyard, obviously. The part where you're actually driving inside the ship, I think it'd be anti-gravity with the 2 paths, the one shortcut that's risky to take. Now, the pipe area, I always get tripped up on the pipe. I hope they do something to fix that. But they have unique obstacles on that track too, like the crabs and the bonefish. Those are really cool. You have the glider ramp at the end. That's a cool part of the track too. This is just a really unique track. I'd love to see it back. I think a lot of fans would be happy to see it back too, because we want to make this selection as good as it can be. Now, another one. I know this one was just remade in 8 Deluxe, but that was in the base game, and it's one of my all-time favorite tracks, so we're going to put it on here, and that's Music Park. Now, this one is very good thematically. We don't get music tracks like ever. Like, when are you going to drive around pianos and drive on xylophones? I don't think in any other track but Music Park. Those big music note things that like ground pound and you can trick with when they hit the ground, I think that's a great part of the track. The music is great, like the beat bopping. And that one trick at the end is always a fun challenge to try to stay on the road in the right path after you do it. I just really like this track. I hope to see it back. It's a great one thematically, adds a variety, fan favorite. So yeah, hope Music Park comes back. Now we move on to Mario Kart 8 and Mario Kart Tour. I grouped them together because all of the Mario Kart Tour original tracks are in Mario Kart 8 except for one, and that one is because it's a reference to an old Mario Kart DS course that was never actually like published into the game. So starting off, we have the base game of Mario Kart 8 and Sweet Sweet Canyon's what I picked here because it reminds me of Wreck-It Ralph in a way because you're racing around Candyland basically. And the vibrant colors look really cool. Like the cake looks great. I'd love to eat that, first of all. The donut shortcut was a really clever idea by Nintendo. The canyon's amazing. I love going through that canyon. And it was a tough choice between this one and Thwomp the Ruins because they're both really cool starter tracks that have really nice themes that you don't see often. But I think Sweet Sweet Canyon had the win hit here because Candyland, Wreck-It Ralph vibes, can't go wrong. And the next one's another really innovative track that I don't think we've ever seen something like this in a racing game, and that's Sunshine Airport. Now, when have you ever raced around an airport before? I don't think you have before. So here we are at Sunshine Airport. It's a unique track, so points for that. The music's nice. You drive in an airport through the wings of an airplane and even get to glide down with the airplanes. There's so much unique things in this track that you can't get anywhere else. I'd maybe add a little bit more to the airport section because it's a little short. Like, you could have a bagging area section longer than just the one shortcut with obstacles so that you have to go through the bags. Maybe similar to the Pillars in Athens Dash, but obviously a little bit easier because this is not a really challenging track per se. So I think it just should come back because it's a unique track. A lot of people like it. It's really innovative, and yeah. And now we're on to Tour Original. So I went with the One City and One like Tour Original track. Like, technically they're new according to Mario Kart Deluxe, but they're Tour Original. So for the city track, I went with Madrid Drive. It's not my favorite one, but it's one that I really like a lot. If you want to go check out my city rankings video, it's in the card, but it's one I do like a lot. There's a lot of innovation here with the soccer field, the museum. There's not a lot of traffic. I think they could add a bit of traffic where you're just driving on a bland road for a few seconds at the beginning of lap 3, I believe. But this is everything you'd want to see in a city track. Difficulty, the wiggler obstacle. So it's not an easy ride like a lot of the city tracks are. And it still represents what a city track is, being one of the better ones as it was the last one released. And for the new Tour Original track, what better one to pick than Squeaky Clean Sprint? Now, this track had to blow everyone's mind. No one expected to be driving around a bathroom, okay? And there's so many clever ideas in this track. Getting a trick off a sink faucet to go onto a shortcut road, a road of sponges to go into a drain, inside of a sewage with a lost ring you can have a shortcut through. There's so much cool elements to this track. There's soap, the van, the mirror even. People don't even notice the mirror, but it's a really cool part of the track. This is just a really unique track, something I never saw coming when I thought of Mario Kart 2 or Mario Kart 8. I didn't think Nintendo would ever do something like this, so I'm really glad they did. It looks really cool, and I'd hope to see it back in the next game because of how cool it is. So with that being said, with all 24 tracks added to the list, I think if it were to come back, it could look something like this. Now, I tried to make it so there's no game overlap between cups and that it progressively got more difficult, sorted by difficulty like how Nintendo does it, but really anything works. I just think this is a good selection. 24 of my favorite tracks that I really like to see. So what tracks would you like to see in the next Mario Kart game? What would be on your wish list? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next one.